Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 22 of Import Nights. And this particular episode is a special two-parter in effect, but not within this series. It's actually going to span two different series. This series, Import Nights, and also Weekend Warriors, the review series for the sports coupes, sports cars, luxury sports cars, etc. And the reason for that is very simple. This vehicle that we are reviewing kind of bridges the gap between what you could call an import tuner car, but is also very dominantly and very clearly a sports coupe. And as such, seeing as there are multiple variations of this car on the game, from Subaru, Toyota and Scion, the Subaru and Toyota in particular will be the ones that we're reviewing, we're going to discuss both in two separate series, just so that we cover both bases in the case of this car. Now, we will not be reviewing the Scion version, because the Scion is exactly the same as the Toyota and the Subaru. Now, that being said, each car is not without its advantages, in particular the Toyota, but we'll get to why tomorrow. For this episode, we're first giving the overview, in effect, of all three models, because anything that I say about this car, for the most part, you can take as meaning that all of the others are the same as well. The Toyota, the Subaru, and the Scion have exactly the same specs, when fully tuned, as each other, with only one difference, and that's the price. But we'll touch on that more tomorrow. Now, this particular model is the Subaru, of course, the BRZ. Of the three, this is my personal favourite because of the look. I think it's the best looking of the three, especially from the front end. And as far as the spec that you get, for 30 grand, which is the same as the base model Toyota version and the Scion version, you get a 2-litre engine, rear-wheel drive. You can turbocharge that engine up to 448 horsepower, which is pretty decent, it has to be said, and almost 300 foot-pounds of torque, 294 to be exact. And, as you'd probably assume, it is pretty lightweight, 1,030 kilos. Again, exactly the same as the Toyota and the Scion. The horsepower per tonne is 435, which is pretty good, but not surprising given that the weight is nice and low, and the fully tuned PP is perhaps a little too high for its own good at 533, but at the same time you can kind of understand why it is that high. It's got decent power, relatively low weight, plus it's a premium vehicle and it's a newer car to the game, and newer vehicles tend to be favoured a little bit in terms of how good and how competitive they are. So the question is, how good are they? And although the specs are the same, do the cars feel different? Well, as far as the spec, as we already mentioned, they are exactly the same in every way apart from price. But the handling and the drivability, the manners of the car in particular, on all three models is very good. Possibly the best all-round attribute of these vehicles is just that, the overall handling package, because the car manages to be big enough to be taken seriously, but at the same time compact enough to be light and have a low centre of gravity. And also this car is, of course, as far as the Toyota version in particular goes, the modern representation, if you will, of the iconic AE86 Sprinter / Corolla, a legendary drift car. So really, these cars have to be good for drifting if the manufacturers want people, the fans in particular, to be happy with it. And thankfully, though admittedly not too surprisingly, they are all good for drifting. So overall, we're not going to go super in-depth into each vehicle, because obviously there's no need to. We'll discuss more about the car tomorrow in the other series, but suffice it to say, they are good performance cars. They're not necessarily going to worry supercars anytime soon, but for their power, for their weight, and certainly for the price, which, if you think about it, is very good. 30 grand is very cheap. They are pretty good sports cars. But that's it overall for the first part, if you will, of this review for the BRZ FRS GT86 chassis vehicle, and tomorrow we will review the Toyota version, one version in particular which I believe is the best version of all of them, for a very specific few reasons. But that's it overall for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.